Welcome to the Notespire Music Artist Insight Podcast, giving you a unique insight into the music and ministries of independent Christian artists. Here's your host, Paul Gibbs.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Artist Insight Podcast. Glad to have you guys along. Talking today to Solange Legal. She is in Canada, New Brunswick, I believe, is where she's at. A little farther north than we are. No, she's shaking her head. She said, no, that's not where I'm from. But she's going to...
Vancouver, BC.
BC, British Columbia. Okay. Yep. Well, Paul doesn't do his homework sometimes.
It's all good.
Okay. All right. She's in Canada. I know that. And I believe, Solange, I think we established previously that you are a coffee drinker. Is that correct?
No, I'm a tea drinker.
I'm wrong again.
I used a lot of coffee when I was younger, but it has been a long time.
It's been a long time. Okay. I'm going to just shut up now about you, and then I'm going to let you talk because I'm getting it all wrong here. Well, hey, that happens. All right. Well, so I thank you for sharing some time here with us on the podcast. So speaking of coffee, and beginning, why don't we just go way back and I want to know where the music and you kind of connected together way back when.
Well, it started when I was a little kid. My dad was a musician. He had both a music ministry that played church, and then he had a country and old rock band, and they would play, gigs on the weekend. And rehearsals for both those groups were at our house in our basement. And so I was around these musicians and these different styles of music from a very young age. And I remember very, very vaguely, but when I was 3, my dad had me sing a song with him with his band for it was an annual summer gig that they had at Cultus Lake. It's a local lake we have here. So they had this outdoor music performance that they did every year. And so for that particular year, he had me duet a song with him. And so that was my first time on stage, first time singing in that kind of capacity. And then as a kid, I took other lessons. I took piano lessons. I took organ lessons. I did some other things in the arts, drama and some other kind of dance, things like that. But it wasn't until I was a teenager that I really began to focus more on my voice and on singing and kind of developed the love of it and found kind of the passion behind that. And so once I finished high school, I got into a post-secondary program that majored in jazz and contemporary vocals. So I decided to go kind of further with that study. And from there, I've been teaching, I've been writing, I've been working in music ministry and in other ministries and other capacities, and just kind of going along for the ride, seeing where God will take me.
I like what you said there, going along for the ride to see where God will take it. I mean, he's given you obviously so many varied gifts, yet they all connect together, obviously. But so many of us, we say, well, yeah, here's what I'm going to do, God. But you say, God, where do you want me to go? I got to go back to ask you about that first song that you sang with your dad. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it was called Daddy's Girl.
Daddy's Girl. I love it. Oh.
It's a cute little song where my dad would sing the verse and then I would sing chorus. And that's how the song was originally done in the original recording, so we did the same.
And who wrote the song? Do you remember, Solange?
No, actually, I don't.
Okay, that's all right. Wish you had her. Okay, wish you had a recording of that, probably, huh? Probably don't have.
I think there was once upon a time on a VHS, but I think that VHS no longer works, and I think it's lost somewhere.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's still something from that floating around or not, but
yeah,
not that I have.
I think that's so cool that your dad. And I was gonna pick up on this. You said your dad did you say old rock or old something?
Yeah, old rock and country.
Okay. some people, myself included, are trying to wait a minute. Old rock. That how far do we have to go back to be old rock?
Maybe a better word would be classic. Classic rock.
Classic. Oh, I love that. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. I used to play that stuff. Oh my goodness. Oldies but goodies. Yeah.
For sure.
So so you grew up in a musical family, but you also mentioned dance. So did music, I mean, music and dance go together, I think, so well. And but also you also said drama. So
Yeah.
any of that still a part of what you do? Or is music your thing now?
Music is my primary focus.
Yeah.
That stuff was more things that I think I experimented with when I
Yeah.
was, and the odd time, some of those skills do still come in handy, and they'll
Yeah.
kind of dust it off and pulled out. Um,
Okay.
but music is definitely kind of where my passion is and kind of where my love is, and so I definitely
Mm.
more that.
Yeah, we'll talk about more about the music here in a second. I want to just share with our listeners and our viewers a little bit from your website. And guys, if before we get too far here, SolangeLegalMusic.com. Let me spell that for you guys. Solange, Solange Legal, Legal, music.com. If you search that, you are going to find her. And on the homepage of your website, I just want to share musician, writer, performer, teacher, wife, mom, sister, and friend. I, I I like that. I like that. And I bet you've got some good friends that would certainly agree with that. Um, but in the middle there, why don't we touch on this? Pronounce that Metis,
Métis,
Métis.
yes.
You want to explain a little bit what that, because that's a big part of of who you are and what you do as well, right?
Yes, it is. So my family ancestry is a mix of European and Native American. And so that combination is people that are recognized here in Canada as Métis.
Mhm. And you're a part of of an organization, right? That helps kind of coordinate things. Am I using the right word there?
No, so I am Métis, and so I do belong to like our local Métis community.
Okay.
I don't work in any capacity for them. I'm purely just a member or a
Okay.
citizen of the community.
Okay.
What I do, however, I do connect into. I think this is what you're getting at. I work for the Archdiocese of Vancouver, Catholic Archdiocese,
Okay.
where
There we go.
and I work for them on Indigenous reconciliation. So this isn't specific to my people or the Métis people. This is kind of for all Indigenous people, um, and for different communities and parishes that are trying to get into understanding and
hmm
participating in the work of reconciliation. So I do work for them in that capacity.
Mm. Does your music, and I think I'm thinking that we had talked about this off camera, that your music is kind of tied in there and gives you a certain connection with people. Kind of helps
Yeah,
you doing what you're doing.
it is really interesting. I when I first got into working for the Archdiocese, it actually isn't something that I thought I would end up doing.
Mm.
Um, I had struggled when news had hit media streams quite a bit back in 2021 about residential schools. And so, through my prayers and my thoughts, I felt called to write a letter to our local archbishop.
Okay.
And a one-page handwritten letter. And through there, I kind of just expressed where I was at personally and where my thoughts and prayers had led me to that point.
hmm
And I had been struggling with how I could be both a Catholic, a Christian, and Métis, and how those two things could coexist within myself. And so the Archdiocese got back in touch with me and asked if I would serve on a Healing and Reconciliation Grant Committee. It's another thing that I do and a committee that I serve on.
Okay.
And at the time, originally, I kind of looked at this request and kind of went, thank you, but I think you don't have the right person. There must be other people more qualified or elders that would be, in a better place to speak to this than. And so they came back and they said, no, we really think you should discern this further, and we really feel you're being called to this. And so I came back again and I said, well, here's the reasons that you don't want me, and kind of listed it out. And they came back again and said, no, those are the reasons we do want you. And so I said, well, I guess we'll see where the Holy Spirit wants me. I'll say yes for now, maybe tentatively, and the Holy Spirit will make it clear if I'm supposed to be here or not. And partly because, in my mind, I'm a musician. I studied music. I didn't study anything to do with this topic or
I'm a musician, not a whatever, right?
yeah, so like I didn't see how these things came together, and I didn't see at the time how God was calling me into that work. To make a long story short, I'm still doing that work. So it is where God was calling me. It just took me a little while to recognize that call and to really discern it and to hear it. But I am very grateful to those who prompted me to discern it further, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, and the music ties in, helps you do that in
Yeah,
many ways,
so
or
this is the
connects.
interesting part. So like I didn't see myself there at all, and it's almost like the Holy Spirit picked me up and put me there. And then as I started into that work, I realized I really needed to speak to people. I'd been asked kind of what project would you start with? And I was like, well, you can't really start with a project because I haven't talked to anybody. And I don't want to unilaterally decide what a whole group of people need. I need to talk and discern and learn from them, hear from them what it is they need. So then as I was meeting with people, um, it was interesting how me as a musician gave us something that we could relate about. It gave us a kind of a common ground. I would talk about my music and the instruments that I play, or would start talking about music, and people could. It was interesting. Their shoulders would drop, and I could see they would relax a little bit. And all of a sudden, we would be talking about music that we both like, or have you heard this? Or I used to play an instrument. And it was interesting how then they would start opening up about their own experiences, people that they knew in a musical context. And then from there, we were able to start talking more openly about reconciliation, and we were able to then get into other topics and discuss other things. But sometimes it was the music um, that made that possible or kind of broke the ice.
Like almost like music help people where they needed to trust you, or see
Yeah.
that connection that they needed to, as you said see their shoulders go down as they would relax. And okay, yeah, I love that. I love how God puts our gifts together. Whether it's multiple gifts that we have ourselves, He uses them together, like in your case, or He takes musical gifts from different people and puts them, or whatever gifts, and puts them together to accomplish what we could not accomplish on our own. Wow.
Well, and that went both ways. It was also a way for me to connect with them and understand them and learn a little bit about them before getting to it. So it wasn't a one-way street. It was definitely something mutual that helped us both understand each other, to be present to one another, and to hear one another, and to, find that common ground.
I love that. So you're still doing that, and I'm sure that's still helping, isn't it?
Yes,
Wow.
it's a huge part of what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's talk about the music. I mean, you've got the most recent song, I believe. Now, I have not been doing real well here, but I'm thinking it's The Answer.
Yes, you got it.
Yes, Paul's got one right.
Wait.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Cheers. Um, so that's the most recent song, right? And that's also the title of your first EP. And I believe you had an experience in Nashville that our listeners and viewers would probably like to hear about.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, or I should say a few years ago, I reconnected with an old friend that we had gone to school together doing our
Mm-hmm.
post-secondary studies in music. And he had gone on and continued with his studies and finished his master's and moved back to Vancouver. At the time, we had been in school. I took a break from my studies and focused on my family. And me and my husband, we started having our children. So, kind of my priorities and things I was focusing on had shifted a little bit.
Sure.
But a few years ago, was getting back into my music and reconnected with this old classmate of mine. And he suggested that I look into somatic voice work. And so I did, and I ended up taking a course through Baldwin University in the States and learned somatic voice work and did the different levels of that. And it was really, really fascinating. I really enjoyed everything that I learned through that. But one of the things you got to do as a student when you were taking this course was to connect with faculty members. And the different faculty had like different areas that they specialized in, and music that they different areas of music that they were
Yeah.
focused on. You know, everyone kind of has their own niche or specialty. And so I ended up connecting with one of the faculty members, Marty Lemaine, and we did a session, and it kind of ended up turning into a few sessions. And we would always work on technique, but he would always ask, what is the technique for? And what is it being applied to? And I was like, well, I'm writing some stuff and been feeling inspired, and I'd like to record it. But at that point, I had still been trying to find musicians locally, and
Right.
to get our schedules to match. And that was really
Yeah.
the struggle. Once I even found the musicians that I connected with, to get our schedules to match, and so that we could actually get together and work on it. And that was proving to be quite difficult. And so I had shared a bunch of the music with him through the sessions that we were doing. And after about, I would say about half a dozen sessions, he said, well, I'm a producer here in Nashville. So what would you think if I
Mhm.
produced this for you? And I set up the studio and the musicians here in Nashville, and we just got the ball rolling. And honestly, I was kind of floored. I was kind of like, me? Like, can I do that? Is that a thing? Like, is that a possibility? And yeah, so I had to take some time to kind of process that, and again to pray and discern on it to see if that is where God was calling me. Um, but I ended up saying yes, and so he ended up producing the EP, so the answer, the one that you just mentioned, so all the songs on there, and so he had set up everything in Nashville. I went there for a week so that way we could do all of the recording, and I ended up being able to work with some amazing, amazing musicians. Like I
Mm.
never would have been able to connect with that caliber of musicians on my own. So that was purely a gift from God,
Yeah.
being able to
Wow.
connect with these people and the opportunity just to work with them, to chat with them. And they were also warm and welcoming when I was there as well. It was really like walking into a room full of friends that you didn't know you
Wow.
had.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it was really a wonderful experience.
Wow. Um, Christian atmosphere, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, even the
Okay.
studio was a Christian studio.
Awesome. Awesome. And I think there's a lot of people that wish they could have that experience that you had. And yet I think it's way out of reach. And I guess where I'm going with this is that uh, we never know what is out of reach. Nothing is out of reach with the Lord, right? He opened that door for you. Wow. And that wasn't something you were really trying to do, right?
No, again, I thought I was going to be recording locally and with musicians kind of within
Yeah.
driving distance.
Yeah.
I
Right.
didn't think that I would be, traveling and kind of recording in that way. Uh,
Hmm.
so that was definitely something that God orchestrated. And I'd like to say, I had through the process, I had, the musicians and the studio and the producer, but My manager was God. He was the one orchestrating and putting everything together and lining everything up. Um, so he's the one who really brought it all together.
Wow. That's, and that's something that we really, I think is worth repeating, that, as Christian musicians, we think, well, if we just had a manager, if we just had a promoter, if we just had a producer, if we just had somebody to do this, and this. And, sometimes God brings those people into our lives. Like for you, he brought those wonderful musicians and producer, but he was already your manager. And guys, if you're listening and watching this, I just want to remind you that keep that in mind, that God is ultimately your manager. And if you just keep going to him and asking him, God, what do you want me to do? Like Solange has just said, that she's these different decisions that she has considered. She has thought about it. She has, most importantly, prayed about it and waited to hear from the Lord on what she should and should not do. And she is recognizing, guys, she's recognizing that God is her manager. I think we all could bear it could bear repeating for all of us. So, Solange, when you came back from that week of recording, you had an EP.
Well, not quite.
Not
There's still a lot of work.
okay. All right. And let's see. So, I'm going to read a little bit more from your website, if I may, for our listeners and viewers. As a child, Solange began composing instrumental piano music and won a composition scholarship. In 2015, she wrote a bilingual English and French mass setting, and a few years later began writing her own lyrics. In early 2024, yes, as she just said, invited to record some of her original work in Nashville. Her debut single was I Surrender, released in June of 2024, followed by Into the Light. There's a pattern here, guys. I Surrender, released in June, followed by Into the Light in September of 2024, just last year, and then You Are, which she released in November of last year. And then we go to The Answers. So those songs, they all tie together, right? Yeah.
They do, and it's interesting because when we were first selecting the music,
Yeah.
I had a bunch of different songs that I'd kind of been working on or had written.
Okay.
And so we went through to kind of decide which ones we should record. And we had kind of narrowed down that we wanted to do 4 songs. And so we had to figure out what are those 4 songs going to be. And as we went through, the songs were selected, but I didn't really see at the time how they connected, just kind of knowing that they were the stronger ones and that they
Oh,
had
okay.
a thread, but they were the stronger ones out of the bunch.
Gotcha.
And so it wasn't until later, as we were, working on developing the songs further to, get them ready to record, and then later when we were mixing and mastering, and I started focusing more on how the release of those songs was going to
Mm-hmm.
kind of come together and kind of in what order, I'd want to release them. Started looking at these kinds of things. How would it unfold? And then I started to realize how the songs were telling a story. And it was, yes, it was part of my story, but it was also I want to say kind of like a common story that we
Hmm.
see in scripture, that we see in when other people talk about, their walk with the Lord and kind
Yep.
of
Yep.
on. And so the first song, I Surrender, that one actually came out first. And I love that that one is what came out first because it's always God who reveals his desire for a relationship with us first. And that is what that song is all about. It's about God's call to us to surrender to him, to come to him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about his invitation into that. And so that's where the story kind of starts, is with that invitation. And then the next 3 songs, they're about the journey and the process to answer that invitation. and to respond. Into the Light kind of talks, kind of it, for me, it was how I could then see where I was at in my own life. And there may have been struggles, darkness, times, desert experiences, um, things where I needed to come to God, but where I also then found God and Him leading me through. So it starts kind of starts there, and then as you go to You Are, that song for me was like writing a love song. It was definitely about the personal relationship with God and with Jesus. And then after that, The Answer, that one is again, it's more upbeat compared to kind of the songs in the middle of the EP. And that one, for me, it was about recognizing that the relationship and the call was good, and I'm so filled with joy. And so that for me is what The Answer was really about. It was kind of that, yes, you are the answer. Yes, I want to surrender, and just sharing that joy.
And what's interesting is that you said you didn't really recognize how the songs all tied together right from the get-go. That was
Oh.
something that came along later.
Yeah, it kind of
I love
revealed
that.
itself as we were working on it.
That is so cool. God was working even before you saw it or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure. And it's interesting too. Most people actually don't realize this, but the songs, even in order, kind of hint at the fact that there's a story, and they kind of hint at the fact that they connect together. So if you read just the titles of the songs in order, it's
mhm.
I Surrender, Into the Light, You Are the Answer.
Wow. Wow. That is so cool. Guys, you gotta please check out this EP, all four of those songs, and listen to them. We have them all, I believe, on Notespire Radio, and you will of course hear them on the station. Um, yeah. Wow. So what's next, Solange? Um, or has God not told you yet?
Well, I'm trying to be present in the moment. And
Yes. Okay.
part of that is this EP just came out last month.
Right.
So it is still very new for everybody else. Maybe not for me because I've been working on it and living in it for a while
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
But it is still new, and I'm as just this, for example, connecting with Notespire. So there's a lot of different people that I've been enjoying connecting with and having conversations with, and hearing about the impact of the music on other people's
Mm.
lives and kind of
Mm.
for them. I love connecting with fans and the people that are listening to the music. Um, so I'm trying to be very present to this part of the release and this part of the process, because I think this is the relationships are being built, and I think that's the most important part of it, is the relationships and the people.
It
And if it
really is, isn't it?
were the relationships and people that I met even prior the release, I wouldn't have the release. And now moving forward, I don't think
Mm.
I'll be able to necessarily step into what God wants me to if I don't spend time in the relationships that He is now calling me to and is bringing into my life.
Mm. That's pretty deep in a good way. I like that. You can't rush the process, guys. What Solange is telling us, you can't rush the process. Make sure you don't go to point B until you're really fully done with point A or
Yeah,
something
or
like
don't skip over, like you
that.
can't go
Don't
from
skip
point
over.
A to point C. There is
Yeah.
D in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. In other words, don't be in a hurry. God's timing is always perfect. Yeah. Don't rush the process. Um,
And
I,
He'll be clear what the next thing is.
yeah. He always shows us the next step at the right time, doesn't he? But he doesn't show it to us before he needs to show it, before we need to see it, because maybe like you, I've been tempted, I guess, to maybe rush the process or maybe lag behind. Um, we don't want to sit too long in the situation that we're in, but we don't want to rush out of it either. Yeah, everything in God's timing. But what, as you said, Solange, the relationship, not only with other people. I love what you said about like the musicians in Nashville, et cetera, et cetera. The relationships that God brought to you to develop those relationships so that to make this happen for you, but also most important, our relationship with Him. And if we're close, keeping that in mind, then He will let us know what His timing is. So, in our few minutes that we have left here, I want to maybe touch on something that, and we've kind of touched on a couple things here already, but maybe expand on an issue or two, maybe an obstacle, whatever we want to call it, that you've kind of faced along the journey that maybe you could share a little bit, and it might help somebody else that's maybe facing something similar right now. What's been an obstacle that's kind of an issue or whatever that's kind of you faced?
It's a good question. Um, I think there's various things really that have come up throughout
Mm,
the process
okay.
and throughout the journey. Um, I know back when I was discerning how to go about, recording and um, who would be involved, um, there was a lot of questions that came up, and even throughout the process, a lot of different questions that
Mm-hmm.
I would have, both just, like sometimes it would just be like logistics. Um, but sometimes, a little bit deeper, what does this mean for me? Um, Even that call to surrender, it's not something that's done once. It's something that I
Mm-hmm.
feel I'm constantly needing to go back and do again and again and deeper and deeper. And there's always a little bit more. And that God's always revealing to me what else I need to surrender. And so sometimes my prayers would often turn to, well, how do you want me to do this? How do you want me to bring these gifts to you? How can I surrender to you? How do I surrender what I don't even realize I'm holding on to? What am I holding on to that I still need to surrender?
Wow.
What can I do to facilitate that surrender better and to, more fully step into what you're asking me to do? And so it often led to a lot of pausing and self reflection and time in prayer to really figure out what that is. Even right now, I'd say, like, I am definitely, as I mentioned, loving the process and enjoying the time building relationships and with, spending the time with people through
Mm-hmm.
um, the release and kind of where I'm at in the journey as far as the music. But I'm also through the journey and conversations, different things, realizing where I still have things that I need to surrender. I still have brokenness, and I still have hurt, and I still have things um, that have happened in my life that maybe I thought I had dealt with in the past, but have realized now, no, I need more grace from God, and I need more healing from God. And these are good things. These are, I think, things that we can all relate to. We've all had hurt, we've all had trauma in some sense. There are different things that have happened to us, and to realize that, again, it's not necessarily something that is, you know, you take care of it and you pack it away and it's done. Sometimes these things, they come back, and we need to spend more time working on it. And so I'm actually very grateful for the
Mm-hmm.
chance for that self-reflection and to know that that's going to bring me more peace. God will, bring more peace, more healing, and that will give me both the strength and the ability to step into whatever's next.
Hmm. Wow. I've talked to many people about this, one issue or another or one obstacle or whatever, but you've put that so well. You put that so well that we don't have to have it all together before God can use us. That's one thing I'm hearing from all that you're saying. And also that it's a process. Um, can we talk just a little bit more about that surrender thing? Because I have heard it said, and Solange, I felt it myself, that uh, surrendering my music, um, and maybe some of our listeners and viewers can relate to this. Surrendering my music. Oh, I'm afraid if I do that, then I'll never play or sing again. God's going to take it, give it to somebody else, and I'll never do it again. That there's fear there about surrendering. How have you dealt with that? Or is that something you have dealt with?
I think there's a lot of fear around
Yeah.
surrendering, just in general,
Mm.
regardless of whether it's, for our music or other things in our lives. There is, because it is an unknown. We don't really know what's coming next, and that's kind of the point, is God knows what's coming up, and He knows what's good for us and what's best for us. And
Mm.
so when we surrender, He can lead us into those good things that He has planned. And oftentimes, and I have experienced this, is I surrendered, my plans, which I thought were, well, my plans, they ended up being like this. But then
Yeah.
his plans were much bigger and much better. So, going with his plan was definitely a better choice than what I originally had set out to do. Um, and I think we see this in our lives. I think this is something that that's the truth behind surrendering. And this is actually why even the song itself, a lot of surrender songs, they can be slow and contemplative. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so they almost have, even musically, um, this feeling of maybe tension. Um, it can kind of bring us a little bit inward, to that place of, oh, this feels a little uncomfortable, or this feels a little scary. But the song that I wrote, I Surrender, I actually wrote it as an upbeat, happy song because that is what surrender does. It brings us into what's good and what is ultimately what's best for us. And
Yep.
so I wanted to share that. I wanted to share that side of surrendering. Surrendering, yes, can be uncomfortable and it can be scary at times, but it is also wonderful. And
Mm.
when you do it, it has so much peace and so much just happiness that pours into you.
Wow.
Um,
Well said. Well said. So, guys, I'm going to ask us all, myself included. Solange, I'm going to put the question to you as well. And I know that you have addressed this many times, but I think we continually have to answer this question. Do we trust God with our gifts, with our lives? And but right now, let's talk about the music. Let's think about the music that God has given us. Do we trust God to do the very best with it, or do we want to keep control ourselves? And we all have to continually, I think, uh, decide to put our trust in Him. Amen.
mhm.
Yeah. So as you have done, you've like wow, you have you've really shared with us today. I know it's going to be a blessing to all that hear this podcast and see this. So how can people connect with you? I know you talked about relationships, and I know that your desire is to have a relationship with everyone that that you can, and through your music. So how can people start that relationship? You can't really reach out to them personally, but they can reach out to you. So how can they do that?
Well, as you mentioned, there's my website. So that's a good way to connect with me. There is a page there for contact
Hmm.
information. So you can drop me a line there. I'm also on socials, so you can find me on Facebook or on Instagram. Um, and I connect with people in, many different ways, so kind of whatever is comfortable for people. Um, there are so many wonderful conversations, and like I say, the impact, hearing about where different people are in their own journey, and sharing that with me, it's both inspiring for me as an artist, kind of helps me to continue working as an artist. Um,
Right.
and I love seeing how God is working. Um, it's easy for me to, in retrospect, kind of see how God used the music and even the stories behind these songs,
Mm-hmm.
um, how he was working in my life, and how that's kind of what I'm hoping is shared, is both how God has worked in my life and how he's calling all of us into relationship
Mm-hmm.
and to be on a journey with him. Um, but it also really touches my heart when I get to hear how that's also happening for other people and how God is working in their lives. So I really do enjoy and cherish
Yeah.
those conversations and that time that I get to connect with
Yeah. It's such an encouragement, isn't it, when you hear someone share with you that how your music, a certain song maybe has touched them, or and it's not only with I'll say, I don't want to say the word just, but the listeners of our music, but also musicians to encourage each other, which is great too. We need all of that. Um, so, guys, please do get in touch with her, Solange Legal Music. .com. There is a contact thing there. Find her on Facebook. Please let her know that you watched or listened or both to this podcast. And Solange, can we touch real quick on because on your website you also have you are also a teacher. So
yeah.
tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, after I finished some of my post-secondary studies,
Mhm.
me and my husband, we realized that our family was starting much sooner than we had planned. And so I shifted into, wearing the mom hat. And through that, I decided that, I'd already been teaching for a few years, but I kind of poured myself into teaching more at that point.
Okay.
And I really do love teaching. I love working with people of all ages. I've had the opportunity to work with people from kind of all around the world. Um, I teach both online and in person. So it kind of,
Hmm.
where you're geographically based doesn't really matter. I can,
Yeah.
Zoom is wonderful.
Cool. That is
Now
cool.
today from doing this interview.
Yep.
So, it gives us the opportunity to connect regardless of where we might be physically.
Yep.
Um,
What
but
instruments what do you teach? Piano, voice? What's your
Yes, we're actually in my music room right now. My piano
I
is right behind me.
okay?
So this is actually where I typically teach and where I work and where I write. This is,
Okay.
music space. Um, so welcome. But yes, I teach piano, I teach voice, music theory. Um, there's sometimes I have students that want to, focus more on composing and writing.
Mm.
Sometimes I have students that want to, they want to play just for fun. Sometimes they want to play because that's what they're passionate about and they want to get into music themselves. So everybody is different.
Mm.
For me, it's always about recognizing what my students' goals are and then helping them to reach those goals.
Mm.
Always looking and then reevaluating, what are the goals and what are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to do?
Mm.
And then kind of walking alongside them and helping them to do that.
That must be very helpful for you as well as you help others, kind of helping you to uh, evaluate where you are as well.
It is. It's actually interesting too how even going over sometimes the simplest thing,
Mm.
going over it again and you hear them ask a question or hear them rephrase it in a way and you're like, huh, I never thought of it that way. So
It goes both ways, doesn't it?
sometimes they're teaching me. And
Yep. That is so cool. That is so cool. Well, Solange, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you sharing with us. And I know it's been a blessing to me. It always is. And I know it's going to be a blessing to others as well. So, guys, I want to remind you that if you're hearing this interview on Notespire Radio, WNSMDB, then you can also check out your favorite podcast site, and you can hear the whole interview there, or watch it on our YouTube channel, and we'll have this out there online. So whether you get your podcast from iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast, do search out the Artist Insight. And Notespire is spelled Notespire, the Notespire Music Artist Insight. And you can find this podcast there as well. Or you may be there already. Either way, please do visit Solange at her social pages and her website, and let her know that you heard and saw her here on the Artist Insight. Solange, when you get some more music done, please let us know, and we'll get back on here and talk about some more.
That sounds cool. Thank you.
All right. Sounds good. We will talk to you again. God bless you.
Same to you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Notespire Radio Artist Insight. We hope you've enjoyed the program today, and join us next time when we again bring you a unique look into the lives, music, and ministries of Christian artists here on Notespire Radio Artist Insight.